right, everyone, welcome back to page 3 of our Algebra 1 midterm review. Take a look at number 15. If B represents how much money you have in your bank account, write an inequality which states that you have at most $326. So again, let's go back to the problem. If B represents how much money you have in your bank account, so we're using the variable B for the amount of money in your bank account, B. You want to write an inequality, so this is our goal, is to provide an inequality as an answer. Write an inequality which states that you have at most $326. Okay, so there's going to be a relationship between the money in your bank account, B, and $326. We need to focus in on this word at most. The words at most, at least, greater than, more than, all of these are really important, and I want to go over them before I tell you what the answer is here. So we have two main inequality symbols. We have the less than symbol, and we have the greater than symbol. Less than. And this one's greater than. Maybe you'll also hear it as more than. Now, the reason I say that the less than symbol looks like that is because I encounter that little point first, because I'm reading from left to right. So I encounter the little point first, so it's less than. When I'm looking at the other symbol, I encounter the big open section here, the big open mouth first. So it's greater than, because it's the big piece first. Now, I want to go over the other vocabulary that you'll see when you see less than or greater than. You'll also see things like fewer, the word fewer. Fewer than will be the less than symbol. The word more than will be the greater than symbol. Now, other things that you'll see is you'll see your inequality symbols with an equal sign underneath them, a single little line. This means less than or equal to. So less than or equal to. So you have less than something or equal to something. In other words, you could have at most a certain amount. Same thing with the other inequality symbol. This is a greater than or equal to symbol. So greater than or equal to. So if you have greater than something or equal to that amount, greater than or equal to, you have at least that amount, but probably more. So this is also known as at least. So I really want you to know that this at most and at least pops up a lot in a lot of real world situations, especially in word problems. So when you have at most, that's the less than symbol with the line underneath. When you see at least, it's the greater than symbol with the line underneath. It almost seems like they're opposites because you're talking about most, that's a lot, but you're looking at the less than symbol. So for this problem, since it says that your bank account has at most $326, that means most likely it probably has less than $326. If $326 is the absolute highest amount it could have, you may have $200, you may have $100, but your largest possible amount is $326. So our at most is right here. It's the less than or equal to symbol. So the largest amount you could have is $326, but you probably have less than that, okay? So that's the answer to number 15. This is your inequality statement. B is less than or equal to 326. Let's go on to the next problem. Number 16. Solve the inequality below. It should just say inequality below. Okay, so I have 4 times x plus 2 is less than negative 1/2 x plus 17. Okay. So let's start by simplifying this. We want to solve for x, which means we want to get rid of anything that could prevent us from making this as simple as possible. And the first thing that I notice that I kind of want to deal with is I want to deal with this parentheses. So let's start there. We're going to take the 4, we're going to distribute it. So we have 4 times x, which is 4x. 4 times 2 is a positive 8. Is less than negative 1/2 x plus 17. Okay, so now, next step, I want to bring all of the x values to one side and all the y values, the x values to one side and all the whole numbers to the other. So, usually what I would do here is I would add 1/2 x to both sides in order to get all the x values to one side. I'm not going to do that here because I don't want to have 4 and 1/2 x as my variable. I want to have something a little bit easier to work with. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So I'm going to erase this. And I'm going to show you that instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have all of the whole numbers go to one side. And then I'll show you how to work with that negative 1/2 x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the 8, positive 8, over to the right. So we're going to subtract 8. And now we're left with 4x is less than negative 1/2 x positive 17 minus 8 gives you a positive 9. Okay, so I don't like having this negative 1/2 x. I want to fix that. I want to get rid of that negative 1/2 in front of the x. The only way to get rid of a negative 1/2 or even just a regular 1/2 is if you multiplied everything by 2. So we're going to multiply everything by 2 in order to get rid of that negative 1/2. Okay, so multiplying everything by 2 means I'm multiplying the left side by 2 and everything on the right side by 2. So this by 2 and this by 2. 2 times 4x is 8x. Less than. Now we have negative 1/2 times 2. The 1/2 and the 2 make 1. 1/2 times 2 is 1. So I'm just going to not even write the 1, but I have to keep that negative in front of the x. Plus 9 times 2, which is 18. Now this is a lot simpler. So the key here was I had to get rid of that 1/2 to make this problem look a lot simpler. And the way I did it was I multiplied everything by 2 because that effectively got rid of the 1/2. Now, we need to add x to both sides so that we can get all the x values to the left. And now 8x plus x is 9x, which is less than 18. Give myself a little bit more room. And now last step, we're going to divide both sides by 9. So we have x is less than 18 divided by 9, which is 2. If I were to graph this, and they didn't ask me to do it, but if I were to, I would put an open circle at 2 on my number line, and then I would shade to the left all the values that are less than 2. In fact, your inequality symbol points to the direction that you need to shade, as long as your variable is on the left. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. Number 17, solve the inequality below. Okay, so again, I'm noticing a couple of parentheses that I'm going to deal with and a lot of x values on both sides. All right, so let's start by dealing with the parentheses and the numbers, the coefficients outside of them. So for the parentheses on the left, the x minus 2, I have a negative outside of the parentheses. So I'm going to have to distribute that to both terms. For the parentheses on the right, I have a negative 4 that I'm going to have to distribute to both terms. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to write down the 5x, and now I'm going to distribute my negative. So I'm going to change the sign of both terms inside the parentheses. So 5x, now I have a negative x and a positive 2. Greater than or equal to 2x, and now distribute the negative 4. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times negative 8 is a positive 32. Now let's start combining like terms. I have a 5x and I have a negative x. 5x minus x gives me 4x. Plus 2, greater than or equal to. Now I have a 2x and a minus 4x. 2 minus 4 is negative 2x plus 32. Now, I have x's on both sides. On the left side, I have the larger x value. So I'm going to go ahead and move the negative 2x to the left by adding 2x to both sides. That will cancel. Oh, I'm sorry. That won't cancel. 4x plus 2x is 6x. That doesn't cancel out. Plus 2 is greater than or equal to. These cancel. And I'm left with 32. Now, I'm going to move away the plus 2 so that I can get the x values all by themselves. Give myself some room to write. And here we go. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And now I have 6x is greater than or equal to 32 minus 2, which is 30. The last step is I'm going to divide both sides by 6 in order to get x by itself. So I'm going to get x is greater than or equal to 30 divided by 6, which is 5. So if I were to graph this, imagine here is my number line. I'm going to put a closed circle at 5. Shade it in. It's closed because my inequality symbol has that line underneath. When you see the line underneath, you have a closed, bubbled in, shaded in circle for your number line. And now it says x is greater than or equal to 5. So all the values that are greater than 5 are going to be to the right. And again, the trick is that your inequality symbol is pointing to the right. So it's going to tell you to shade to the right as long as your x value or your variable is on the left. It will tell you which direction to shade. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. Number 18. Which inequality is represented by the graph below? Okay, so we're trying to figure out which is the correct inequality for the graph that we see here. Now, I'm noticing that I have a 2 where my starting point is, and the circle is shaded in. So it's going to be either a less than or equal to sign or a greater than or equal to sign. Now, I'm going to have 2, and I'm going to put x as my unknown variable. And since it's all being shaded to the left, since I've put my x value on the left, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a symbol that's pointing to the left. So I'm going to have x is less than or equal to 2. So all of these values, 1, 0, -1, everything in this left direction is less than your value of 2. And at 2, that's where we have that equal sign for the bottom of the inequality. So this graph represents x is less than or equal to 2. We need to find which of these inequalities, A, B, C, or D, once we solve them, gives us the value x is less than or equal to 2. So we're going to go one by one, and we're going to solve each one. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So let's get ready. So starting with A, I'm going to rewrite A so that I can go ahead and manipulate it and solve for x. So x plus 3 is less than or equal to 2x minus 4. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by distributing the 2. So I'm going to get x plus 3 is less than or equal to 2x minus 8. I multiplied 2 times x and 2 times negative 4. Let's get all the x values to one side. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. And I'm left with 3 is less than or equal to x minus 8. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And now I have 3 plus 8, which is 11, is less than or equal to x. Now, 11 is definitely not the number that I want in my inequality. I want the 2. But I want to show you that you can also rewrite this inequality so that your x value is on the left-hand side by flipping everything. So I'm going to put the x on the left. I'm going to flip the inequality. And I'm going to move the 11. So everything is basically a mirror image. Everything's flipped over. X is greater than or equal to 11 is the solution for A. Now that's not what we want, so we're going to cross it out. So this was A and all the work for A, and that is not what we want. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to try out B. So B. We have 2x plus 17 is greater than or equal to 7 times x plus 1. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to distribute the 7 to both terms in the parentheses. 2x plus 17 is greater than or equal to 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 1 is 7. Let's bring all of the x values to the right where there is the 7x, the larger x value. So if I subtract 2x from both sides, now I have 17 is greater than or equal to 5x plus 7. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides to get all the whole numbers to the left. If I subtract 7, I'm left with 10 is greater than or equal to 5x. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And I get 2. Really shouldn't cancel that out. They don't cancel. 10 divided by 5 is 2, which is greater than or equal to, these 5's cancel, x. Now the 2 is what I wanted, and having the little line underneath the inequality is also what I wanted, but I'm used to seeing it in the other direction. So let's go ahead and flip this entire thing over and have the x written on the other side. So x, so I've moved the x to the left. I'm also flipping the direction of the inequality since I'm moving everything around. So x is less than or equal to, and then I move 2 to the right-hand side. X is less than or equal to 2. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted an answer choice that was x is less than or equal to 2. So I'm going to say yes to choice B. Now let's take a look at choice C and choice D. I want you to notice one quick reason as to why this would not be the correct answer. For C and for D, these are less than and greater than symbols, but they're missing the line underneath. Because the bubble is bubbled in, or the circle is shaded in, there should be an equal sign underneath the inequalities, and there's not. So that's why I would say no to choice C and no to choice D right away, and I wouldn't have to do any work because I want one that has a less than or equal to symbol. let's move on to the next problem. Number 19. Solve the compound inequality below and graph your final answer. So we are solving and we are graphing these compound inequalities. Now, compound inequalities could either have an and or an or. When you see that there's an or, that means you're usually going to see a number line that's shaded in two different directions. So there's going to be some shading to the left and some shading to the right. So let's go ahead and we're going to solve each piece of this compound inequality and see how we're going to sketch it. So for the first one, zoom in. We have 3x plus 5 is less than negative 16. Okay, so I want to get x by itself. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So now I have 3x is less than negative 16 minus 5 is going to give me negative 21. And now the next step is we're going to divide both sides by 3 in order to get x by itself. So it's x is less than negative 21 divided by 3 is negative 7. So it's x is less than negative 7. That's going to be one part of our graph. Now, for the second one, negative 5x minus 8 is less than or equal to negative 13. Okay, so let's start by getting the x values by themselves. So we're going to add 8 to both sides. These will cancel. So now we have negative 5x is less than or equal to negative 13 plus 8 gives me negative 5. Now the last step is to get x alone. You're going to have to divide out the negative 5. But we need to be very careful when we are dividing by a negative in an inequality statement. Very careful whenever you see this negative and you're going to have to multiply or divide by a negative. You have to know that automatically you're going to end up switching the direction of your inequality. So I'm going to do that first before I do anything else because I don't want to forget. So I'm going to switch my inequality to be a greater than or equal to symbol because I'm dividing by a negative. Now, the negative 5s will cancel. So I'm going to have x is greater than or equal to, and the right-hand side, negative 5 divided by negative 5. The negatives cancel, so I get a positive 1. 5 over 5 gives you 1. So these are our two inequality statements. X is less than negative 7, or x is greater than or equal to 1. So to graph it, I'm going to draw my number line. I have two important points here. I have negative 7 and I have 1. So I'm going to put a open circle where I'm going to assume negative 7 is. And I'm putting an open circle because I don't have a little line underneath the less than symbol. Now, the other part is going to be at 1. I'm going to put a circle at 1 and I'm going to shade it in. Why? Because there's a line underneath the inequality symbol. So now x is less than negative 7. So the arrow is pointing to the left, where all the values are less than negative 7. So I'm going to shade to the left. And for the other one, x is greater than 1. So my inequality symbol is pointing to the right. So I'm going to shade to the right, where all the x values are larger than 1. So I'm going to shade to the right. And this is my final graphing of this compound inequality. Let's look at the next piece. Okay, the second question here now. X plus 7 is less than or equal to 2, or x plus 17 over 3 is greater than or equal to 5. So let's go ahead and start solving. For the inequality on the left, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. And when you're subtracting, you're not switching the signs. It's only when you're multiplying or dividing. So now I have x is less than or equal to 2 minus 7, which is negative 5. Pretty simple. Now let's take a look at the one on the right. Now I have x plus 17 is over 3. So I want to go ahead and I want to get rid of that denominator of 3 first because it's very distracting. It makes it look a lot more complicated. So let me start by just getting rid of it. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Okay. Since the entire left side has a denominator of 3, both the x and the 17 are all the numerator and only 3 is the denominator, I'm going to be able to cancel out the 3's right away. Now I'm left with x plus 17 is greater than or equal to 5 times 3, which is 15. Now I'm going to subtract 17 from both sides to get the x by itself. And now I have x is greater than or equal to 15 minus 17, which is negative 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and sketch our graph. So I have one bubble that's going to go at negative 5. And since I have that line underneath the inequality, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to shade in the bubble. So x is less than or equal to negative 5. This inequality is pointing to the left, so I'm going to shade to the left. So these are all the values that are less than or equal to negative 5. And now for the other inequality, I have negative 2 as my starting point. Same thing, I'm going to shade it in because I have the little line underneath the inequality. And now my inequality symbol is pointing to the right. So I'm going to shade to the right where all the values are greater than negative 2. So this is my final answer for the graphing portion of this compound inequality. You can have an answer for this compound inequality that's here in this shaded area or that's on the right shaded area, and all of these are solutions. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Number 20, word problem ahead. The total cost V of renting a vacation home for D days is given by the inequality V is greater than or equal to 115 plus 40D. What is the maximum amount of days for which a sailboat can be rented if the total cost was $395? Okay, so let's go back through it. The total cost V, so V represents the total cost of renting a home for D number of days. And this is the inequality that they're using. V is greater than or equal to 115 plus 40D. What is the maximum amount? So this is the ask. What is the maximum amount of days for which a sailboat can be rented if the total cost was $395? The total cost was $395. Well, remember, total cost is the letter V. So they're saying V is equal to $395. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in V into our inequality, and we're going to be able to solve for the number of days that $395 lets you rent for. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug things in. So we're going to have $395, which is the V. Remember, we're looking at this inequality right here, is greater than or equal to 115 plus 40D. Okay, first step is I'm going to get the D value by itself. So I'm going to subtract 115 from both sides. It's going to cancel on the right. Now on the left, 395 minus 115. Let's do the math. 5 minus 5 is 0. 1 subtracted from 9 is 8. 1 subtracted from 3 is 2. So I'm going to have 280 is greater than or equal to 40D. Last step, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to divide both sides by 40. On the right, it's going to cancel. So I'm going to be left with D. 280 divided by 4. When you both have zeros for your division, you can cancel the zeros out. So it's really 28 divided by 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7. And now let's flip this inequality so that we have the variable written first. D is less than or equal to, because remember, you have to flip everything, including the inequality. D is less than or equal to 7. So the number of days is less than or equal to 7. So if I'm thinking about this on a number line and I have 7, it would be shaded in. And then the number of days is anything less than or equal to 7. Now, naturally, you can't have a negative number of days, but could it be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Yeah. But the maximum it's going to be is 7, including 7 because of that number, the little line underneath the inequality. So the question is, what's the maximum amount of days that you could rent the sailboat? Choice A says 3 days. Is 3 less than 7, less than or equal to 7? Yeah, it is. Is 5 days less than or equal to 7? Yes, it is. Is 7 less than or equal to 7? Yes, it is. Is 9 days less than or equal to 7? No. So it's not going to be choice D. But they're asking for the maximum amount. So if you can stay for 3 days, great. But you can also stay for 7. You have enough money to stay for 7 days. So 7 is the maximum amount of days that you can rent this vacation home for. Choice C is your answer. Let's move on. Okay, full steam ahead on this word problem. We're going to break it down and we're going to make it work. In order to save money for prom this weekend, Tom is going to walk his neighbor's dog for $14.50 per hour and wash cars for $9 per hour. His mother told him he can work no more than 12 hours in order to keep up with his homework. If Tom would like to make at least $215 to cover prom expenses, help him determine combinations of hours he can work between these two jobs. Which of the following systems of equations can be used to model this situation? Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Let's lay out our information. Let's make this work. In order to save money for prom this weekend, okay, that's unimportant. Tom is going to walk his neighbor's dog for $14 per hour. So $14.50 per hour. So basically, we're doing $14.50. I'm not going to write the 0 per hour of walking the dog. So I'm going to use D for walking the dog. And he's going to wash cars for $9 per hour. Okay, so $9 per hour washing cars. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a C for washing cars. All right. His mother told him he can work no more than 12 hours in order to keep up with his homework. So remember, D stands for the number of hours walking the dog. C stands for the number of hours washing cars. So she's saying D, the number of hours walking the dog, plus C, washing the car. So the amount of hours he takes doing both together should be no more than 12. No more than 12, meaning at most it could be 12. Really, you want D plus C, if you're the mother, to be less than 12, but you're giving him up to 12. So I'm going to use the symbol less than or equal to 12, because you want to have the number of hours that he's working to be less than 12, but you'll allow it to be equal to 12 as well. So that's why I'm using the less than or equal to symbol. Let's keep going. If Tom would like to make at least $215, he wants to make at least $215 to cover prom expenses. Help him, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so unnecessary information here. Which of the following systems of, it shouldn't say equations, it should say which of the following systems of inequalities, very similar to equations, it's just they have inequality symbols instead, So which of the following systems of inequalities can be used to model the situation? All right, so the only other value that we haven't included in here is the 215. So in terms of the amount of money he's making, that's here. $14.50 for walking the dog, $9 per hour for washing cars. Okay, together, you want to add these together because he wants to earn money from both. And together, the amount of money that he would like to make is at least $215. So I'm going to put 215, and I'm going to think about which inequality symbol should work there. So at least 215. So you probably want to make more than 215. At least means you probably want to make more than that. And the lowest amount that you want to make is 215. So I'm going to use the inequality symbol that stands for at least, which is greater than or equal to. I want to have greater than or equal to 215. Ideally, I want greater than. Okay, so these are two inequalities. Now notice in our choices here, A, B, C, and D, they don't use our letters D and C. We did that because it makes it easier for us to think about. D for dog, C for washing the cars. So let's take a look at which one of these is laid out the same the way that we have it, except using X's and Y's instead of D and C. So in the first one, notice that they're subtracting 14.5x minus 9y. So they're taking the amount of money you would earn walking the dog and subtracting the amount of money that you're going to get washing cars. That doesn't make sense. So no to choice A. Choice B. Okay, so we're adding the two together. That's good. And it's saying that you want to make less than or equal to 215. You don't want to make less than $215. He needs to afford the prom. He wants to make more than 215. This is the wrong inequality symbol. He wants to get greater than or equal to 215. He wants to make at least 215. So it's not choice B. Choice C. So we're adding together the two amounts of money that we're going to get from each activity. And together we want it to be greater than or equal to 215. Yep. And then we're saying that the number of hours walking the dog minus the number of hours washing the car should be less than or equal to 12. Your mother never said that you can subtract the hours. She wants together for you to be doing no more than 12. So subtraction is the wrong symbol here. Okay, we're going to add the number of hours together to get the total number of hours. We're not subtracting. So get rid of C. Choice D. Okay, we're adding the two values for each of the activities. We want that to be greater than or equal to $215. So that's good. And we want X plus Y to be less than or equal to 12. So the number of hours walking the dog, the number of hours washing cars to be less than or equal to 12 to make your mom happy. You want to be less than or equal to 12 so you have time for your homework. It's good. Choice D is our answer. I'm not asking you to solve. I just want you to figure out which would be the correct way to set up this inequality. Okay? We're done with this page. Time to move on to the next video.